Yo, what's going on people? It's your boy Huncho, and this is a breakdown into the UK's most biggest and in-depth police investigation in the history of British policing. I present Operation Venetic.
The National Crime Agency, working with police forces up and down the country and our law enforcement partners, have led a large-scale operation which has dealt a hammer blow to organised criminals operating across the United Kingdom. Together, we have made hundreds of arrests. We have smashed criminal networks, and we have gone after the ringleaders, the masterminds, and those who thought they were beyond and above the law. This operation has coordinated the seizure of huge quantities of drugs, a large number of lethal firearms, including automatic weapons and explosives, and we have recovered a vast quantity of criminal cash. This operation shows that we can go after organised criminals no matter where they try and hide, and we will continue to target those that profit from the misery of others.
Now, before we break the operation down, we need to do a little bit of a timeline jump so it becomes clear for you guys. In 1991, a man by the name of Phil Zimmerman created Pretty Good Privacy, or for short PGP, which was a way to encrypt messages to send to people, and for years it was the closest thing to military-grade encryption. Now, it gets a bit confusing to explain the process of how this works, but basically, users have a public key and a private key. Senders use the former to encrypt messages, which can only be decoded by someone who has access to the information. And if that didn't make sense, in a nutshell, it's a way to communicate privately without anyone being able to intercept the information, and you can only access it if you have a key, hence why a lot of criminals use this method to communicate with each other. So fast forward to the 2010s and we see dark web users using this kind of encryption to keep themselves quote-unquote anonymous on the internet, but of course PGP is used for a wide range of things. So after finding breaches in the PGP system, with the most popular service at the time being BlackBerry's PGP system being hacked by law enforcement, and of course encryption technology advancing, a Dutch company would rise in popularity called EncroChat. So how would you get your hands on an EncroChat phone? Well, you couldn't buy one online, you had to leave your contact details and a representative would get in contact with you. The device itself would cost around £900 and you would get a 6-month contract for a further £1,500. Now, according to their website, the phone offers a wide range of things, but some key ones that you need to keep in mind are that they guarantee anonymity, which meant there was no way to associate the device or SIM card to the customer account. They offered EncroChat messaging protocol, which they described as the electronic equivalent of a regular conversation between two people in an empty room. They offered something called panic wipe, which meant that from screen lock, a user can type in a PIN and instantly wipe all data off the device. They also offered self-destructing messages, which meant you could put a timer on a message you sent to someone and it would delete on the other person's device depending on how long you set the timer for. And they also had something called industry-leading hardware, which meant that basically they removed the camera, microphone, GPS and USB data port. So you might ask yourself, well, how do you make a phone call off a device such as this? And to that, they had preloaded apps on there for instant messaging, which gave you the ability to make VoIP calls. And for you guys who don't know what that means, it's basically technology which converts your voice into a digital signal, allowing you to make calls directly from a computer. So EncroChat priding themselves on being the top dog when it comes to encryption, with them stating that their methods wouldn't be breachable. How does it then become breachable and become the centre of a European-wide police operation? And how does it become the centre of the UK's biggest policing operation to date? Well, in 2017, French authorities started to investigate the company after phones sold by them were found as part of separate criminal investigations. Authorities have said to have penetrated the company's servers in northern France and put a technical device in place in around March of 2020 to go beyond the encryption technique, which would grant them access to users' correspondence. So of course, the French authorities, alongside Europol and other policing agencies all across Europe, which included the NCA or National Crime Agency, and in turn the Metropolitan Police, and in turn other police forces across the country, would set up their own individual operations, with the UK labelling their operation as Operation Venetic. Throughout Throughout the operations, police gained access to over 20 million encrypted messages which prevented assassinations, abductions, shootings, murders, robberies, extortions, assaults, and hostage-taking. They were able to intercept dozens of international drug shipments, dismantled many drug labs, and stopped money laundering operations. They also gained access to tens of thousands of images sent by users of EncroChat. On June the 13th, the company had sent out a message to all users that read, "Today, we had our domain seized illegally by government entities. They repurposed our domain to launch an attack to compromise carbon units. With control of our domain, they managed to launch a malware campaign against the Carbon to weaken its security. Due to the level of sophistication of the attack and the malware code, we can no longer guarantee the security of your device. We took immediate action on our network by disabling connectivity to combat the attack. You are advised to power off and physically dispose of your device immediately. Period of compromise was about 30 minutes, and the best we can ascertain was about 50% of the Carbon devices in Europe due to the update schedule." The malware that was being used by policing authorities meant that it could potentially read the messages written and stored on the device before they were encrypted and sent over the internet. One of the phone models that was widely used by EncroChat was BQ Aquarius X2, an Android phone owned by a Spanish electronics company that Encro would install the encryption software onto. In May of 2020, some users of this model noticed a problem, that the wipe feature that EncroChat prided themselves on had stopped working, with an associate coming out to tell reporters after the operations that at the time they believed that either the user had forgotten their reset PIN number or that the wipe feature wasn't configured properly, which was nothing to be alarmed about because users can make mistakes. Encro employees tracked down one of the phones that was affected by the problem, and you guessed it, it wasn't a user problem, it was malware found on the phone, and they then come to the realization that all users having this problem had their phones hacked. So if you didn't guess it by now, in March of 2020, police had successfully breached EncroChat via malware that was created for the X2 model, and it's believed that around April 1st, they had begun to collect data. On top of disrupting the wipe feature, the malware was also designed to conceal itself from detection, record the screen lock password, and clone application data. After realizing it was a malware attack, of course at this point they didn't realize it was the police. Over the 2 days that followed, EncroChat pushed an update to its X2 models to restore the phone's features and gather information about the malware installed on its devices around the world, adding that the update was put in place so that the company could keep an eye on the devices without having to physically have it in their own hands. But almost immediately after the patch, the police struck again, and this time it was harder than before. This time they could change the lock screen password rather than record it, and things had started to escalate. The company then went into full emergency mode and of course sent out that message on June the 13th that they had a breach, but by this point police had been gathering data for months, and all policing agencies involved had access to over 20 million encrypted messages that had been sent by users, and they had access to tens of thousands of images. So with over 10,000 users of the 60,000 that were using EncroChat being British nationals, it was now time for UK police forces across the country to start acting out upon the information that they have got their hands on.
One strike.
The National Crime Agency, who had been working on hacking into EncroChat alongside other policing officials across Europe, had said that this operation was the equivalent of breaking the Nazis' Second World War Enigma code, and that dozens of crime groups have now been dismantled in the UK. And going into more detail about the hack, officials would say that police were able to watch criminals plot their every move as they used EncroChat, gathering real-time clues. And because they've collected enough evidence, they can now put them behind bars, and it's now been revealed that police across the country have captured 746 criminals ranging from mid-tier to kingpins. In the series of raids across the country led by the National Crime Agency, regional organised crime units and various different police forces across the UK, they seized £54 million in cash, 77 firearms which included AK-47s, multiple submachine guns, 4 grenades and 1,800 rounds of ammunition. A carbine converter was also seized. 2 tons of Class A and Class B drugs had also been seized seized by police, which included 28 million etizolam pills, which are known on the streets as street Valium. 55 high-value cars and 73 expensive watches were also seized by police. On top of all this being seized, police had dealt with more than 200 threats to life that had prevented murders between rival gangs, just as we previously spoken about. In more depth though, these threats to life included plots to remove limbs, stage acid attacks, carry out kidnappings, and to assassinate people via shootings as part of ongoing turf wars around the UK. NCA Director of Investigations, Nikki Holland, said she had seen messages that had quote-unquote chilled her to the bone as drug kingpins discussed ways they wanted to torture and kill their rivals. She went on to say this was criminals talking about how they were going to see off their competition. They range from the removal of limbs through to acid attacks and shootings. It wasn't a case of going and shooting someone. Some of them wanted to do really incredible things to them before getting to that point. She would also go on to describe how the NCA had disrupted a drug supply chain into Britain from South America, and where a cruise liner was being used to ferry in drugs. Going on to say that 3 people were arrested on drug smuggling charges, and one of them which included someone who actually worked for the ferry liner. Although only 746 criminals had been arrested, she went on to say that this was the tip of the iceberg. She said that the NCA, alongside other British law enforcement, are looking to round up all 10,000 British users of the EncroChat. Going on to say that the criminal underworld is now running scared as more arrests are soon to follow, and she revealed that some recent messages from EncroChat users read, "This year, the police are winning. NCA, as you well know, are sophisticated and relentless. If NCA, then we have a big problem, and the police are having a field day." The Metropolitan Police have come out to say that this is the most significant operation the Metropolitan Police Service have ever launched against serious and organised crime, and they went on to say those arrested under one investigation were identified as being part of a most high-harm OCN in London with long-standing links to violent crime and the importation of Class A drugs. Adding, the central figures of this group led lavish lifestyles, live in multi-million-pound properties with access to top-of-the-range vehicles. They appear to be successful, respectable business people, but they are dangerous individuals. Our enforcement activity against them reflects this. We used our most highly trained firearms officers and sophisticated tactics to arrest them at their addresses. In an investigation carried out by the NCA and Scotland Yard, it showed that there were links between international organised crime groups and serious violence across London. It focused on an organised crime gang spanning the UK, Europe and the United Arab Emirates, involving the importation and distribution of cocaine and firearms. In June, detectives identified a plan by this organised crime gang to shoot and kill a member of a rival group. Their investigation meant that they were able to take action to prevent this. An individual was arrested for conspiracy to murder, and a loaded pistol was also seized from an associated search of an address. Miss Holland, NCA's Director of Investigations, revealed that some law enforcement officers had also been arrested, suspected of corruptly helping criminal gangs, and she confirmed that no senior officers were involved, but refused to draw further on details. In reference to the investigation, she added that they had worried in April that the coronavirus pandemic would disrupt the police operations, but she said it actually worked to their advantage as more people were home when arrests were made. She would go on to say, "This is the biggest and most significant law enforcement operation of its kind in the UK, and it's previously unmatched in terms of scale. We've dismantled well-established organised crime groups and have already secured evidence to prosecute a significant number of known criminals that previously remained beyond our search. The infiltration of this command and control communication platform for the UK's criminal marketplace is like having an inside person in every top organised crime group in the country. This is the broadest and deepest ever UK operation into serious organised crime. This is just the start of the operation, and it will be going on for a long time yet. I'd say to any criminal who uses an encrypted phone, you should be very, very worried." The NCA is proud to have led the UK part of this operation, working in partnership with policing and other agencies. The results have been outstanding, but this is just the start. A dedicated team of over 500 NCA officers has been working on Operation Venetic night and day, and thousands more across policing, and it's all been made possible because of the superb work of our international partners. Together we have protected the public by arresting middle-tier criminals and the kingpins, the so-called iconic untouchables who have evaded law enforcement for years, and we now have the evidence to prosecute them. So it's being revealed that the Crown Prosecution Service is now leading in all the Operation Venetic prosecutions, and it's understood that this international drugs bust is more significant than when Ross Ulbricht, or as some of you may know him as Dread Pirate Roberts, leader of Silk Road, was arrested, and in turn the website being shut down. And it's also now understood that international investigators are going after the team who ran EncroChat, and they said that they led luxury lifestyles, although the technology itself is not illegal. And that is the breakdown into the UK's biggest and most in-depth police investigation to date. Of course, there's more updates come out about this, about big key players that were involved in this operation. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated, but let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. Give the video a little like, and if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.